Hello, we are the University of Wisconsin-Madison team for the RSO Advanced Manufacturing Olympic. We are a team comprised of current and recently graduated students from the College of Engineering at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and we all met and have worked together in the makerspace on campus. So throughout our process, we used the Creaform Academia 50 handheld 3D scanner to assist in our reverse engineering. A few points about the Academia: it is an LED white light scanner, and it can scan parts that are up to 3 meters wide with an accuracy of 0.11 millimeters, or about 4 thou. The overall mesh resolution that can be produced is roughly half a millimeter. Next. So our generic process was, upon viewing the parts, we found what we thought would be most difficult and focused on that first. So for instance, this tire or spare tire carrier in front of us, we really focused on those tight angles and the weldments. And you can see kind of our scanning setup in the top left there. We were working with building out the meshes and then taking them into CAD to clean them up. Next. So here's another example of the hose manifold we were working on. You can see we brought it into VX Elements, which is the proprietary software that Creaform scanners run on. And then from there, we built the scans out in SolidWorks and then got some nice renders like you can see on the right. Vlad, would you like to cover this part?
Yeah, this part we tried to get some scans, but it was hard to get the internal geometry. So we mostly just modeled this parametrically, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail in a later slide on how this part was made and what came up. Next.
Sounds good. Yeah, this was another part that we thought was worth a mention just because of how extraordinarily difficult it was to scan. Those fan blades were almost always shadowing one another, so we could never get a good scan of a single blade. As well as the part it wasn't entirely radially symmetrical, so we couldn't just revolve some CAD and call it good. We had to go in and really focus on each individual portion of the part, and it proved to be a major time consumer. Next. So some of the, I guess, unique or different techniques we employed to help our scans turn out. On the left, you can see I'm using some developer spray to get a shiny machined part to give it a matte finish so that the scanner could pick it up better. And basically the spray is just chalk dust dissolved in acetone. But when it's sprayed onto the part, it leaves a white residue that's much easier for the scanner to pick up. And then on the right, you can see we have some Legos and some Play-Doh. The Play-Doh we were using to mount parts at weird angles where they wouldn't normally sit so that we could scan in different crevices. And we did that so that we could stitch multiple scans together and get a full profile of a part without necessarily scanning it all at once. And then the Legos we used to kind of elevate our scanning surface a little bit so that we could run the scanner down at tighter angles while still maintaining contact with our point mesh and not losing tracking.
Alrighty, so this is part of the bracket that holds the chain derivative pulley. One of the major challenges about this part is that, contrary to a lot of the other parts, there were very few flat surfaces that one could reference off of, or even post-scan extrude from. As you can see, even those ostensible circular revolve features aren't straight either on the interior or exterior surface. There are curves. They are sort of they pinch in towards the center. and then bow out towards the center on the inside surface. And the way we dealt with that is we made use of the built-in reverse engineering features in SolidWorks, their scan to 3D feature. Particularly, we made guide curves, which you'll see in a moment on the next slide, and then use those in a couple of strategic revolves and extrudes, allowing for loft to help compensate for the tapering elements of the actual part. Next slide. So here you can see the guide curves for both of the hoops and the base part, and then also the initial slices that were ultimately used for the two loft elements. Usually a part like this you would treat symmetrically, but we couldn't in this case because it simply wasn't symmetric enough for us to be able to make that simplification. The advantage of this particular modeling technique is that it, as opposite to some of the other automated scan to part features that are out there, it doesn't create surfaces that still need to be stitched, corrected, and filled. All of these extrudes and loft and revolves intrinsically create parametric parts that are easy to manipulate later, send over to various CAM programs, or print. There is much more flexibility with these parts rather than surface or mesh-based bodies. Next.
All right. So one of the categories was innovation and automation, and we came across an application we liked when doing this hose manifold. This part, from what we could tell, these holes are offset and it's not quite plane to this face. And getting that dimension was kind of tricky, and what we saw was getting a scan was really hard too. You can see here on the right. But making a parametric model of the part wasn't so hard, but the issue was that figuring out precisely what these dimensions were kind of difficult because we didn't really have a scan to go off of. But even if we did, modifying the parameters kind of stacked up. So depending on, for instance, what depth this hole was at, this triangle face in the middle would sort of change its shape. Depending on what profile it was or how far out this whole circle on this top face was, like what diameter that was at, that would affect the rest of the geometry. And so essentially, you could make a surface, like a surface scan of this part, kind of like what we have here, if you wanted to just one-to-one replicate the part. But presumably, the Air Force doesn't just want parts that are, carbon copies. They want what is like the engineered drawing of the part. So even if you are matching a surface, you still have to account for symmetry conditions if you want something that's, machinable. And the other thing is with a lot of these automated programs out there, they're kind of black box. There's not a lot of control. And with these symmetry conditions, you still end up having some sort of parametric inputs. So this part is easy to CAD, but the dimensions aren't very accurate. We tried getting creative with dividers that had these like offset pins. That way you could get inside and then extract dimensions with a caliper, but even that's not that accurate. And then a parametric model is also better down the road because you can just tweak dimensions and change the diameter rather than having to work with like control points on curves. And then, like I mentioned before, these interrelated dimensions make it, even if you have the model, even if you have the scan and you're tracing it in like SolidWorks, it's really cumbersome to get everything to line up. Like if you just drag and, directly link dimensions to a part in the model, then it's not really parametric, it's more of a constraint. And then manual fitting this was really non-intuitive because there's so many kind of overlapping relationships. So we thought this was a great task to automate. The solution that we came up with was, first, this is kind of a test example that demonstrates what the code does. This is done in McNeil Rhino using the Grasshopper visual coding environment. This is basically Python. So you take a parametric model of your part. So you like CAD it up in SolidWorks with like extrudes, revolves, or you have a surface model. It doesn't matter. You have some sort of inputs. In this case, we have just the radius of a sphere. Then you input your 3D scan, and then you try to match those two meshes. So a 3D scan is usually a collection of points that are then meshed as a surface mesh. So you essentially have two meshes. So similar to what you would do for preparing like a finite element analysis, you would mesh your part, or you would mesh your parametric part, which is this in red, and then you have your 3D scan here in green. And then what the solver does is you feed it the input parameters, and then you give it a fitness function, and it solves for that fitness function. In this example, what it's doing is you have your two clouds, you have point clouds. So like each mesh at these intersections is a point. And then you have your point cloud from your 3D scan. What this code does is it just finds the nearest points and pairs them. So you have just a bunch of couples, and then you figure out what the minimum distance is. And then by varying the sphere radius, you're able to minimize that distance, and then your two meshes will sort of shrink to each other. And that's what you see in this picture to the right. So I tested a bunch of different solvers. Pictured here, we have the opossum solver, and then we have the one native to Rhino, which is the Galapagos solver. Galapagos has, well, anyway, there's a bunch of different solvers, but what's important is that the opossum one is the best one we could find. And it's free, and it beats out a lot of commercial software. So here's our solver. This is specifically meant for these, black box optimization problems. It's the Opossum Optimization Solver by Thomas Wortman. Here's the website. There's a lot of good papers out there demonstrating how efficiently it solves. So like in particular, you can see here, for the given test case, if you were to solve it by brute force, this is your convergence. So using a direct solution method isn't very efficient, but throw some machine learning algorithms at it, and it's actually converging really nicely. And this green or this red line right here is this solver. It solves something called surrogate models, which have excellent convergence, and it doesn't really matter what your relationship is. So like for this part, that stack up, you could describe that mathematically, but it doesn't really care. It just figures it out. It's a competitive solver. It won a competition beating out commercial software, and it's free. So I really like it. And this is Galapagos. You can see that it kind of just guesses a bunch, whereas Possum just converges. And it gets the exact answer. So next, what we did was we implemented the solver. So all I did was I used the same code, and I just replaced the sphere with the tire hitch. And here's the inputs. Here you see the Opossum solver pointing at the inputs, and then you just run it, and it will tell you what your dimensions should be to match your 3D scan. And here's an example of it in progress. So these dimensions are off because I restarted it, but this just demonstrates how the code works. So in green, you can see the part is created parametrically with these slider inputs that I can move back and forth. And that will sort of adjust the various dimensions on the part. So like the length of the plate, the width of the plate. And then in this graphic, top right, you can see the 3D scan. And in red, you can see the part kind of forming around it. And then there's the point clouds matching each other. And then here's the solver running. And yeah, so this makes figuring out some of these angles really straightforward, and you can use this to inform your parametric model and get the numbers that you really want. And then, well, the part that makes it really nice is that when you have a lot of linked dimensions that kind of stack up on top of each other, so like say you have a chain of 4 different variables, this solver will optimize them really quickly. And you can have it running overnight, and it'll get your CAD to match your 3D scan really nicely. So that's that. And for wrap up, I guess, guys, you can chime in, but if we had more time, I think with all the COVID stuff, we weren't able to get the scanner we really wanted. So if I had a little bit more time, what I would like to do is get a better scan of this part, and then try the solver that we create, the automated solver that we created, to get this part working. Because this one was just really hard to measure with the caliper, and it would really benefit from this method.
Yeah.
Um,
So as far as sort of sensitivity um, to time as a resource, what I like about the direct volumetric modeling solution that I used is that it's very scalable. If you just throw a single basic trace in for each of the major features, you can very rapidly generate a basic model. But the if you want to invest more time and you want a more precise model, you can very easily scale the accuracy by just adding in more and more reference curves along the way. And you can sort of see, if you go back one more slide, in that center image, even with these sort of very basic initial sketches, you can see that interlacing effect between the green mesh and the gray solid model, showing that they are they aren't perfectly on top of each other, but they are consistent. They may vary locally, but overall, uh, the solid model I got is a strong approximation of the mesh, and there's an inherent smoothing in that process that makes that corrects for some of the roughness in the raw scan.
yeah, it looks really good. All right, I think we're out of time. Clayton, do you have anything to add, or are we all
Yeah, no, I
set?
think you guys hit the nail on the head. Given more time, more resources, I'd love to try that solver on some of the more intricate stuff. But overall, I'm really happy with what we have.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That's a wrap.